Our speakers for today's session are experienced product leaders who bring in 10 to 15 years of experience. So today we have with us Rishit Jain, Principal Product Manager at Tata 1mg, Ishant Kathuria, Senior Product Manager at Airtel Labs, Sharat Babu, Product Manager at Paysend, and Shautrik Jordar, Product Manager at Zycus. So we welcome you all, and we are really excited to have you all as speakers with us tonight. So before we get started, I would like to introduce some housekeeping rules here. If you have any questions during the sessions, please type them in the chat box, and you can also raise your hands to ask your questions directly. And we'll also have a Q&A session at the very end, where all our four speakers will be participating to answer your questions. So with that note, let's begin the masterclass with the first session, that is data PM versus platform PM versus growth PM. Uh, so we have our speaker with us, Rishit Jain. Hi, Rishit, how are you?
Hi Priyanka, doing very well, thank you.
Yeah, so Rishit is a full stack product manager. He has experience in creating full long-term strategy to crisp hand-on execution. He has built products from concept to launch for uh, disruptive startups and global enterprises. Previously, he has worked with Delivery, Hitachi, and Boeing in the product space. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand over the session to Rishit. Please introduce yourself and let's get started.
Sure, thank you Priyanka, thank you so much for the introduction. I think you've done justice to the introduction, so I'll just get started with the session. Uh, so let me try and share my screen. Okay, Priyanka, is my screen visible?
Yeah, it is.
And you're able to see the first slide, right?
Yes, we are.
Sure. Thank you, Priyanka. So I'll start. As Priyanka mentioned, this is a data product management 101, and I'll be talking about the differences between a data PM, growth PM, and a platform PM. And before I start, I just like to set the agenda. Where I like this line: if you can't explain it simply, you don't really understand it well enough, right? And that's the takeaways that I have from this session today, where it's a success for me and the people on the call if we are able to achieve these three things, and not three. Even if we are able to achieve the first two, I think it will be partially successful, where we'll be able to understand and articulate the difference between a data PM, growth PM, and platform PM. Whenever you look at a product or feature next, and that product and feature can be across any domain, intuitively we should be able to identify the underlying data, platform, and growth components. And the North Star, I think for me, would be if after this session, we are able to explain point number one to a 6-year-old using an example, right? And that example can be anything that that person uses, be it from a digital world or a physical world. So let's get started. And since I'm the first speaker, I thought I'll just do a product management 101 refresher before delving deep into the differences between a data PM, growth PM, and a platform PM. So this is how I define it. Simply, I think there's some background noise. Priyanka, can you put other participants on mute, please?
Yeah, I just did.
Sure, thank you. So product management for me is all about solving a user problem. And then when you talk about a user problem, right, it can be anything reaching from point A to point B, the likes of Uber, Ola, or the likes of Indigo Airlines or a Go Air. At the end of the day, they are helping users reach from point A to point B. Feeling hungry, Domino's, Zomato, Swiggy. Staying fit, a gym across the road, Cult Fit, or you want to diagnose diseases, order medicines, 1mg, right? Now, when you do that, once you have identified a problem, who is the user you are trying to solve that problem for? Is it a B2B user, a B2C user? Are these internal operations users, sales, marketing, accounting? Are these developers? Think of them developers using Postman API as a product. And within all of these, you can further subdivide them into different cohorts, segments, personas, and different jobs that these users do. And then we come to solving, right? And to solve, once you've identified a problem, once you've identified the users for which you want to solve these problems, you use technology, business and operational processes, product and user experience design, analytics, data science, experiment over those solutions, iterate, and then come to a solution where you're trying to find a product market fit, right? So let's keep this broad level framework in mind, because when we go to the different types of PMs, then there will be very slight differences in where these PMs operate in these three spaces, right? And from a mental model perspective, we always start from a problem, then to a user, and then try solving it. If we have not identified the right problem, no matter how elegant the solution is, we'll end up failing, right? We'll not be able to solve for the user, neither will be able to create a viable business model. Now jumping on, right? So let's take an example before we come to summarizing or I talking about a lot of theory. Uh, so I want you guys to have a look at this page. Um, this is the homepage of Tata 1mg, right? And you open any app as of today, you'll have a homepage. Now, my question to you is, and people in the audience can type their answers. Somebody wants to unmute and say something, you can go ahead and do that. Is it just a page or is it a manifestation of a platform? So I'll pause for about 10 seconds in case there's someone who's trying to answer this question. I'll look at the chat window. Okay, I don't have any responses yet. I'll move forward. So,
It's a manifestation.
sure, thank you. Who was that? Nilesh.
Amir.
Amir, Nilesh. Sure, thank you. Uh, you're right, Amir and Nilesh. Right, it is a manifestation, uh, but it's also a page, right? Let's say today we have a home page where we have, as an entry point, it has medicines, it has lab tests, it has doctor consultation. But tomorrow, if let's say 1mg wants to get into vaccination, or if there's a new wave of COVID that comes up, I hope that doesn't. Then what the users will come on this homepage would want to have an icon that helps them get an RT-PCR test, right? Or that helps them get a COVID vaccination, for example. But if we would have to do that, either you as a product manager who's looking at growth for RT-PCR or COVID, they work with this technology team, have a new widget built in, and then launch, which might take anywhere between 7 days, a sprint, or a month, and you've already lost a lot of time. However, if you build this page as a platform which has reusable components, which can be, let's say, these tiles, instead of these 2 by 4 tiles, you can have 2 by 2 tiles. You can have a video here. Instead of linking it to medicines, you can have a link to a vaccination page, to a RT-PCR page. Then there's an underlying platform that a PM can use to configure all of this, and hardly it will then take about 2 hours or 4 hours once you've taken a decision to make these changes. So again, going back to our product management 101, what problem is it solving? If you look at it as a platform, it's solving the problem of faster time to market for any changes that needs to be done. However, if you look at this page as a page that drives conversion from the top of the funnel, a page that helps increase transactions or increase traffics on specific sections, then it's problem solving the problem of growth. Now, if you look at this page from a perspective of, can I personalize this page, and based on historical behavior of a person, whether they've taken medicines for a chronic disease or an acute disease, or let's say Ayurveda products versus homeopathy products, you can look at this page as a data product problem, where can you showcase relevant content and relevant widgets on this page. Uh, for this specific example, which is the first page that we have, I'll consider this as a platform. And It's solving the problem of faster time to delivery. Who are the users? The users can be sales, the users can be category, the users can be a growth PM, the user can be a data PM, right? And there can be times where, let's say, you don't have a widget available, then the trade-off that the platform PM would have to take, whether you build that widget at the platform level, which can then be reusable across multiple verticals, or you uh, build that at a vertical level, at a growth level, then possibly only a pharmacy medicines PM would be able to use it. If in future a labs, diagnostics, or a doctor consultation PM needs to use the same feature, they'll have to build it all over again. So this is one example. We'll move to the second one, which is, and I'm not pausing for questions. In case you have any questions, feel free to write them on the chat. We have dedicated time at the end for any questions. Uh, Now let's move on to the second example, right? So on the same page, we see these two widgets. One banner is showcasing that you can get an HbA1c test for rupees 299 only. Another one is showcasing 40% off on Ayurveda supplements. Now the question I'll ask is, why only HbA1c test, right? Why not a full body checkup? Or why not a thyroid profile? Why not a lipid profile? Or why not an RT-PCR? Right? So if you have to personalize this based on, again, who the user is, which city the user is from, historically, what kind of transactions have they done? What is the source that they've come on this platform from? uh, and then create a model which dynamically changes these banners and upsell. Then you look at it and you say, what problem is it solving? It's solving a personalization problem where a user lands on the page and they get something that they have an intent for, right? However, it's difficult to figure out an intent. On the other hand, if a data PM is able to recommend this with a high degree of accuracy, it's also solving a growth problem because the conversion rates and the click-through rates on these banners will increase. Now, as those click-through rates increase, your transactions will increase. Okay, what problem is it solving? Let's say solving a data product problem where you are able to personalize these pages based on historical behavior. Why is the problem important to be solved? Again, user satisfaction, customer experience, higher transaction rates, higher click-through rates, high conversion. Who are the users? In this case, you have your typical B2C users, somebody who's coming to the platform to buy a medicine, to get a health checkup done, to order OTC products, and you can further classify it based on their demographics and personas. How the problem is being solved? Again, in this case, the problem is being solved through a personalization engine or through a recommendation model. Now, if we go to the last part, right, when we say what does a growth PM does, even in the previous two, we did touch upon this growth that is getting driven. But specifically, a growth PM would look at user behavior, would look at intrinsic motivations of the user, and try to nudge the user towards a specific action, right? Uh, Now, when I say a specific action, let's take an example of the pricing widget here. So you have a normal MRP and you have another price available, which is much lesser than the MRP. And it says free shipping and some cashback with care plan, and then it's trying to explain something. Now, the underlying motivation that the growth PM is trying to drive is people or the users are sensitive to price. And if I give them a lower price, it's highly likely that they'll opt in for a lower price. And then, uh, as a PM who takes care of growth for the care plan, which is a subscription program, this becomes very important because what they've now tried to give here is an intuitive comparison and a nudge for the user to click. Typical metrics that the growth PMs would look at is funnel optimization, transactions, revenue numbers, ARRs, which is annual recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue, engagement on the platform, right? Now, what problem is it solving? If you look at the end user, for the end user, it's solving a problem of price. I get the same offering at a lesser price with a membership. Uh, if you look at from an organization perspective, it's solving the problem of loyalty. It's solving the problem of having more people opt in for your premium membership. Something similar to, let's say, an Amazon Prime. Who are the users? Again, the user set in this case remains the same, which are B2C users who have a need for medicine. And they are discount seeking users or sensitive to price. And how the problem is being solved? It's being solved through user nudges and over a period of time to come up with this nudge and then identify whether something like this would have worked or not. You run an experiment and you do an A/B test where you say, okay, I have a version without this price, I have a version with this price. I have bifurcated both my users, multiple users, uh, into two different cohorts, and which cohort is performing better. And maybe then your cohort one is not, or your experiment set is not performing as you would have expected, your hypothesis failed. Then as a growth PM, you go back to the drawing board and take a call whether the hypothesis was wrong, right? This comparison the user doesn't care about, or the design of the experiment was wrong. Maybe this is confusing for the user and then the user is not clicking on it, or maybe the information isn't enough. And then you iterate and keep on experimenting. Uh, so I took these three examples. All of these three examples involve all the three components of a data PM, platform PM, and a growth PM. Even if you look at this pricing widget, for me to do rapid experimentation, there has to be a pricing mechanism, a platform which helps me experiment with this quickly, right? If tomorrow I want to include competitor pricing also in this, I cannot again go back to the development team and ask for doing that. So having a platform helps. It's helping again a growth problem where I'm able to have higher conversions on this membership. And then from a data perspective, if I have an ability to customize these prices on a dynamic basis based on users' propensity to buy a product, users' location, users' historical transactions, and the kind of medicines that they bought. In medicine's case, this might not be applicable because there are regulations available. But if you look at an Ola, Uber, or an Amazon or a Flipkart, um, their dynamic pricing really works, right? So that is where the data science models come in. So if we have to then extend these examples into uh, generic things that a growth PM, a platform PM, or a data PM would look at on a day-to-day basis, right? So it's not a versus. There is high overlap, but still, if you have to define key things or key focus that a growth PM would look at, or they'll be responsible for in an organization, right? So they'll focus on business metrics, revenue, user growth, metrics like annual recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue, daily average users, monthly average users, funnel optimization. What that means is, let's say somebody lands on the home page. What percentage of those people click a widget and then go to the next page, let's say the product description page? What percentage of those people then again add to cart? What percentage of those people again from add to cart to uh, go to the cart and click on the payment page or proceed to buy, and then how many actually make a transaction? uh, Growth PMs typically do rapid experimentation, a lot of experimentation. Do you have a button say add to cart, or do you have a button which says buy now? How does a user react to it? Do you design a button with let's say a red color on it or a green color on it? These are very simplistic examples. One of the examples of design that we looked at was the pricing widget as well, which is slightly more complicated. But they'll do lots and lots of experimentations, lots and lots of A/B tests to understand what works for the users and what does not. Right? And they use a lot of data to do it, but then that does not mean that they fall into the category of a data PM, which is slightly different. Uh, a lot of user research and customer insights gets generated. Some of this customer insight is used for driving growth. Some of this customer insight is actually used to create new features, and this may translate to a platform PM or a data PM. And there is quite a lot of overlap with product marketing here in the growth side. Um, Coming to the platform PM part, a platform PM would typically think in abstract entities and their properties. Right. So now going back to the example of the homepage. If I have to develop homepage as a growth PM, I might look at what is the user behavior as of today and how can I optimize people clicking on certain elements of the homepage. However, when a platform PM thinks about the same problem, they'll think about, I have these three verticals. I have a pharmacy vertical, I have a doctor consultation vertical, I have then a diagnostics vertical. What are the different components that these verticals can require in the future, right? They might require a banner space on the homepage. They might require, let's say, a bottom sticky. They might require a bottom navigation. The bottom navigation might have at any given point in time 3 entities or 5 entities, right? And whenever these changes would need to be done, there should be a no-code mechanism to do it. Right? Now think of typical SaaS platforms. Think of an Oracle ERP. Think of an SAP. Think of Zoho. So when they go to a client and they say, we have this product, why don't you integrate? It's not custom development. It's mostly configurations. It's API integration, right? And then these platform PMs have to be holistic in their thinking in the system design that they do, because all use cases, or at least 80-90% of the use cases, have to be covered, and the systems need to be configurable. If they are not, you'll miss a use case. Then you'll have to go back to the drawing board again and have to ship out things which again might need a quarter, and then you've already lost a lot of time to market. So you don't want to build something, the same component again and again in again a pharmacy vertical, a diagnostics vertical, and a consultation vertical. Uh, Inherent cross-functional thinking is needed, and it enables organizations, whether internal or external. So a lot of work that is being done by a platform PM is then used by a growth PM or a data PM. Think of it as Lego blocks, where a platform PM decides what kind of Lego blocks need to be built, and then a growth PM can pick and choose those blocks and drive these metrics, and a data PM can try and pick and choose those other blocks and drive their own metrics. Uh, Coming to the data PM part, uh, there is a lot of overlap in the skill set, but the unique point here is a data PM would typically deal with probabilistic outputs. So at the end of the day, you're predicting something, right? Again, if you are recommending a product, a lab test, you're predicting based on certain signals, and that prediction may or may not be correct, right? You're trying to understand users' intent. Some other examples. So this is personalization, both from a UX perspective, from a recommendation perspective. There's a lot of optimization that gets done in, for example, logistics domain or airlines, where you're trying to ascertain, given an input set or given a load distribution, what is the best way to service that load. Machine learning, again, the same example. Uh, I've done 10 transactions of a particular average order value. Based on that, can I learn user behavior and recommend the next product to that particular user? Or based on the data collected from my Android device, can I identify on a map whether it's a road, a railway station, or a river that's flowing through? Artificial intelligence, think of it as this, right? If you've trained a machine learning model on a lot of data, let's say data of cats and dogs, tomorrow if a fox comes in, can we build something that's intelligent enough to identify that as an animal at least, even if I've not seen that data previously? Computer vision, again, X-ray images, am I able to identify X-ray images and give a diagnosis of what the disease can be? And the tricky part in all of this is the precision, the recall, the data quality, and the feedback loops. And what that means is, in the 100 cases that I'm trying to predict, what is the accuracy of my prediction? That's precision. That is what a data PM really, one of the core metrics that this person works with the team. Recall, what this means again is, if 100 cases are presented for prediction, how many cases am I able to predict? Right? There can be cases where the algorithm is not even able to predict anything, whether right or wrong. Data quality, you're collecting a lot of data. How do you remove noise? How do you make sure the data that you're collecting is good enough to actually build a model on top? And how can you build feedback loops so that your models, all of this keeps improving day in and day out? So all of these things is something that a data PM looks at. There are overlaps. So let's say an overlap of a platform PM and a growth PM would build something such as a growth platform or an A/B testing platform, or a platform that helps you run sales and campaigns, right? So you need skills from both sides. Uh, a data PM and a platform PM would typically build something like a data platform where you have a central platform which gives you customer insights. And then, uh, again, coming back to the healthcare example, a pharmacy PM can use the same customer insight in a different way, whereas a diagnostics PM can use the same customer insight in a different way. Both of them would not have to write business logics to create the same insights from data, and you have this platform which is available. This gets used a lot on gaming devices and gaming platforms where you have a customer 360, and across different games, these PMs are able to leverage this. And then the overlap between a data PM and a growth PM would be something like a personalization led growth, which is a very, very common example around recommended buys. And if you look at all of this three, how they all come together is to build an ecosystem, an entire company, so to say, or a homepage example, so to say, where a growth PM drives conversion, a data PM gives recommendations, and a platform PM has built the building blocks on which the homepage was created. So this was more of a summary view through the example, and that's all I had for the session. But would happy to take any questions that the audience may have.
What do you think is the future?
Uh, the future is you need to build companies that will use all three, right? So all three will continue to exist, and all three will keep on adding value. There will be new ways and innovations in all three aspects. So I don't think there's one future. Uh, if you ask me, it's not the future; it's already the present. The platform way, almost all the companies that have reached a certain scale are going the platform way, because it doesn't really make sense to build something again and again as you expand horizontally and launch different businesses. If there are common capabilities that are to be leveraged, platforms is something that companies build. This is comparatively new, hasn't really been done a lot, but it's not the future, it's the present. Uh, Similarly, data product is still in its infancy. Uh, you need a lot of understanding of data science to get into a data product role. And the primary difference is when you look at a platform PM or a growth PM, there's a lot of certainty involved. Think of it as a nested if-else statement and business rules that you're building. A data PM will not be able to build business rules, because you don't really know whether the output is correct or not. So this is a new and emerging field. Think of likes of Facebook, think of Grammarly, for example, based on whatever you're typing on the platform. There are times where it will autocorrect, and there are times where it will only give a recommendation. It will autocorrect when the confidence on the prediction is very high. It will give a recommendation when the confidence on the prediction is less. Growth, again, right? No company can work without growth. Every company needs revenue at the end of the day, more and more users. Uh, So I don't think there's one answer in terms of what's the future. Growth is something that has been, growth PM roles have been there for some time. Platform PM roles have been there in large organizations, is picking up in startups as well. Data PM is a more specialized role, but this is also picking up quite fast. It will take some more time to really come in the mainstream. Not all companies have a data PM role and specialization, but if you look at, let's say, 10, 20 years down the line, even 7, 8 years down the line, there will be a lot of requirement for data PMs.
Hey Rishit, can you tell me how would you go about architecting the whole data side of the product management for your company? For example, if there's a company who's in its early stage and the products are getting built, various sort of products, internal, customer centric, etc., and we want to drive the whole paradigm using data, how do you sort of architect the whole thing? How do you go about it? Need inputs from your side.
Uh, sure, Talkie, right? That's a good question. I think I'll go back to the basics of product where I'll have to define what the problem is, right? If it's a new company, still trying to figure out a product market fit, I don't think there's a need for a data product manager, right? What you would want to do is build robust pipelines to keep collecting data. Don't think that any data is not useful. Just keep collecting them, build a data warehouse over a period of time, democratize data. And once you reach a certain scale, then it's very important to understand what problems are you solving for, right? I'll take a couple of examples to elaborate, right? So we have a system for prescription validation, right? You upload a doctor's prescription, and all of us know how good the handwriting of doctors are on those prescriptions. And there's a machine learning model that reads those prescriptions and converts it into the specific medicines that have been prescribed and directly adds it to the cart. Now, that the rendering of that particular recommendation or that particular prediction has to be in real time, because as soon as you upload a prescription, we cannot give you a bad experience where you're waiting for 5 minutes, 3 minutes. Right? So you architect that in a very different way, right? As compared to something that can be run on batch, something like um, something like defining your cohorts. So you take millions of users, look at their historical behavior, define, let's say, 10 cohorts, and based on those 10 cohorts, you see 10 different home pages or 10 different user journeys, right? So that is more of a one-time job. You can have higher latency, you can have, let's say, lesser server costs, architect it in a different way. And for something like a prescription validation, your model should really work in almost real time. So you architect that in a different way. Overall, I am a big fan of democratizing of data. So any team that needs to use it should be able to have access to it. So a data platform in that sense is more of a data warehouse which has views built on top of it, which different teams can use.
Hey Rishit, my question was actually I had an assumption that data PM would like a company should have a certain stage to actually have a data PM because you would need enough data to make that prediction. So I just
Right.
wanted to validate that if that's correct, or there are like some early stage startup would be looking for data PM. Thank
Sure, I think broadly your assumption is correct. Uh, so there are three aspects to it. The first aspect is there should always be a data mindset. So let's say you have a mobile app. That mobile app is being used by, let's say, your field operations staff. And typically, when these are internal applications, you don't really worry about collecting data, right? And if you are in that kind of organization, you should actually build a case for start collecting that data so that in futures, 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, you should be able to draw some insights out of it. There are a lot of companies that do that mistake. For that, you do not really need a data PM. You just need that mindset that data is important and valuable. The second aspect is uh, there are companies which are AI first. What I mean is, let's say there's a company who's trying to parse CVs and resumes of candidates and match them to relevant job descriptions. So those companies would require they might hire a PM without a data product designation, but those companies typically require a skill set that a data product manager needs. Uh, and then the third aspect finally is that you are at a stage where you get a data PM, but you don't really know what problems they need to solve, or you are not really, for you, data science or a data product is a black box and you have unrealistic expectations. Even then, a data product manager role kind of will fail, right? Uh, so overall, yes, you are right. Unless you have a lot of data, you don't need a data product PM, data PM, so to say. But there should be mindset, and there should be some person in the organization that's driving that mindset. You may call it data PM, you may call it someone else, but that's absolutely necessary.
Got it. Just prolonging your answer in some aspect, you told about recording the data. So how do you like make sure, like how do you understand what kind of data should we be recording at this given stage, or is it like record everything, whatever you can?
Uh, I think broadly, without, it's very difficult to predict the kind of problems you'll be able to solve in the future, right? So as long as the cost associated with recording data is not huge, and that cost has gone down exponentially over the past decade or so with AWS, with Azure, with GCP. So my recommendation would be to record everything that you can. Right? You can have it in a low-cost storage, which is not easily accessible, but yeah, you should record all of your consumer data, all of your transactions data. You might choose not to record uh, low value data, let's say a lot of user clicks that might not be relevant 3 years down the line, but all transactions and all user behavior demographics data should be recorded.
Got it. Thanks.
What is the difference between product analyst and data PM?
So Dipesh, a product analyst would would do a lot of number crunching for you, right? They might do instrumentation, they might set up your Google Analytics, they might uh, create rudder events, they might help you in estimating the impact of a feature that you'll release. They'll work very closely with the PM. A product analyst typically works very closely with a growth PM and a data PM. A data PM, there's no requirement for a data PM not to get into data and do all of that himself or herself. But for a data PM, it's important to create the requirements, the guardrails, and the vision for the product. Now I'll give you an example, right, for that. So let's say you are building a recommendation system. You can not just go and tell your data scientist that I want to build a recommendation system. You have to provide certain guardrails in terms of I want to give a separate recommendation for a senior citizen. I want to give another recommendation for, let's say, somebody who's a youngster. I want to optimize for average order values versus I want to optimize for cart drop-offs. And once you run these experiments, you have, and there will be no experiment that gives you success on all the metrics that you are trying to achieve, right? So there will always be a trade-off. Then a data PM would actually go back and look at the experiment results and take a call in terms of whether the experiment was successful or not, or where to draw the line. There will always be a trade-off between precision and recall. So if I want to build something that predicts how many marks will I get in the next test, my model can very well say you'll get anywhere between 0 marks to 100 marks, and I will always be 100% accurate, right? Because it's the entire range. My precision will be 100%. But if I want to say, okay, you'll get between 70 to 80 marks, my precision will go down. If you want to say I'll get 78 marks, my precision will go down further, right? So what's the right guardrail for a specific business use case is something that a data PM looks at, builds a use case, business case for it, creates human in the loop processes to operationalize those products, right? Similar case, let's say in healthcare, if you are predicting a disease, the cost of a wrong prediction is high. The cost of a, when let's say you do not have a disease, the model predicts that you have a disease, right? How do you handle such cases? How do you build a product flow for that? Or you have a disease, but the model does not predict that you have a disease, right? How do you take care of all of those things? So all of that product flow, all of that product design is something that a data PM does, where a product analyst would be more in terms of assisting the PM, and they'll have their own insights. They'll dig deep into data and find patterns. They'll identify what are the areas where there are areas of improvement. And a product test analyst has that career path where they can either go into senior product analyst, business intelligence, data science core, or they can transition into a product management role.
Hey Rishit, sorry, one more question. And I'm keeping it very open-ended, but we know that every company has at least sales, ops, tech, and marketing, right?
Sure.
Almost every company.
Yeah.
So what tools have you used or you recommend others using for us to optimize these processes inside operation, all these departments?
So Takir, I think that's very, very open-ended, right? When you say these processes, which processes are you referring to? The interaction between these functions and the product team, or are you referring to a specific process?
I'm talking about how sales operates, how sales would interact with the customer, how marketing interacts with the customer, how ops interacts with the customer, not with each other.
Right. I think there are tools available in the market, right, for sending out push notifications, for example, for marketing, right? You have app, something like called an app Annie, which gives you a benchmarking of how your app is performing as compared to competitors. Again, you can use your Twitter feeds to understand customer sentiment, apply a layer of NLP. Uh, right, but what in a generic sense, what I can say is whatever processes, whatever tools that you have, it's very important to have processes so that you can collect all of that data and uh, assimilate that in a repository, and every month or every quarter you sit with your product team and discuss the feedback that you've received, or the kind of voice of customer, as we say it, is there, and that voice of customer can go back into the product roadmap. From a product perspective, there are tools like Mixpanel, Hotjar that help you record user sessions, that help you look at heat maps, that help you do A/B testing quickly. So you don't have to build everything in house. You can just use a SaaS player that's already there. I'm not sure, Taki, whether that answered your question completely or not, but I think that's from a product perspective that's how I look at it.